Ever get that like creepy feeling? You know, when you see those seemingly perfect families on social media, and you can't help but wonder, like, what's really going on behind the filter?
Oh, yeah,
Like
totally.
in 2018, remember that with the Chris Watts case? It was
Oh.
all over the
Oh,
news.
absolutely. I mean, who could forget that?
The murders of Shanann Watts and her two little girls, Bella and Cece. It just shook everyone.
It was just so horrific.
It really was. And it's partly because of how, like, picture perfect Shanann made their life seem on social media, you know?
Right.
And then bam, this horrible reality hits. So we're going to dive into that today, the Chris Watts case. We're going to go beyond the headlines and, all the surface stuff.
Yeah, try to really understand the whole story.
Exactly. I think what makes this case so fascinating and disturbing is how totally opposite, like, Shanann's online persona was from the horrible truth.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it really makes you think, how well can we ever really know someone, especially now with everyone crafting these perfect online identities?
Totally. It's almost like we all have these like double lives now, the polished version for the world and then, the real messier us underneath.
Exactly.
But with the Watts, it was like those two worlds just like collided in the worst way.
Yeah, tragically.
Yeah. So let's start with Shanann's online presence. Her Facebook was just like flooded with these photos and videos of their life, vacations, birthdays, the girls, just being adorable.
Right, she was constantly posting.
And she just seems so in love with Chris, always praising him, the perfect husband, the perfect dad.
Yeah, she often posted these really heartfelt tributes to him, especially around holidays, like Father's Day. There's one post that always sticks with me. She called him her rock, her best friend, the love of her life. It's chilling to read now.
Oh, I know. And then there's that video of Bella, their oldest, proudly saying, "My daddy is a hero." It breaks your heart.
It really does, knowing what we know now.
Right. And it's almost like she was trying to convince, well, everyone, but maybe even herself, that, everything was perfect.
Right, like maybe if she said it enough, it would be true.
Yeah. But if you look closer, you can kind of see the cracks in this perfect image she built. She was privately texting friends, confiding in them that Chris had become really distant, withdrawn. He was ignoring her, ignoring the girls.
He seemed genuinely worried.
Yeah, you can tell in the texts. She was frustrated and even mentioned a big fight with Chris's parents about uh, their attitude towards Cece's peanut allergy. Like they didn't even care.
Hmm.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's like you said, cracks in the facade.
Indeed.
These texts give us a glimpse into a very different reality, where Shanann's struggling to keep everything together, dealing with money problems, and a husband who's emotionally checked out.
And let's not forget, the Watts had filed for bankruptcy like, what, a few years before all of this?
Yeah, and it seems like those financial issues were, coming back.
So while Shanann's projecting this image of the perfect family, she's privately battling anxieties about, well, their whole future, their marriage, the family's finances. And this is where things get really dark, Turns out Chris was living this whole other life. He was having an affair with a coworker named Nicole Kessinger.
Right, and when you compare how he treated Nicole to how he treated Shanann, it's just shocking.
It is. It really is.
He was showering her with gifts, romantic trips. He even had like a secret app to hide photos of her on his phone.
Wow.
Yeah, it's clear he was putting a lot of effort into this affair while, neglecting his family.
It's just classic, isn't it? Deception, manipulation. But what's really scary is how calculated it all seems. Like he was living these two completely separate lives.
Playing the doting husband and dad while, chasing his own desires.
Exactly. But did she know about all of this? About Chris's lies? Or was she like totally in the dark, like she claimed?
Well, that's where things get a little fuzzy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Nicole insisted she believed Chris, when he told her he was separated. But when you look into the digital evidence, it gets a lot more complicated.
Like what kind of evidence?
Well, for example, her internet search history, it tells a different story.
Really?
Yeah, she was searching things like, man, I'm having an affair with, says he's leaving his wife. And get this, she even searched for information on Amber Frey. Remember her?
Wait, Amber Frey? The mistress of Scott Peterson?
Yeah, the one who was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife back in, what was it, like 2002.
Wow. So, I mean, what was going through her head? It's hard not to be suspicious.
Right. And then you add the deleted phone calls, text messages between her and Chris, and it makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does seem like she knew more than she, initially let on.
And then there's the phone call to the clinic.
What phone call?
There's a record of a call from Nicole to a clinic. She was asking about the safety of taking OxyContin during pregnancy.
Hold on. We know Chris slipped Shanann OxyContin, right?
Mm.
Right. But he never said where he got it.
Exactly.
So could he have been covering for Nicole? Or was she, doing her own thing?
Yeah.
Maybe out of jealousy. Or wanting to be with Chris, for sure.
It's hard to know for certain, but the timing of that call with everything else, it just raises red flags. And let's not forget, cell phone data placed her phone near the Watts home the morning of the murders.
Right.
And her phone had never been there before.
And wasn't she supposed to be at home?
That's what she told investigators, yeah. And a neighbor reported seeing a truck that looked a lot like hers in the area, too. So there are a lot of pieces that don't quite fit,
Right.
The investigators on the case, they said they didn't really look into Nicole further because Chris had already confessed, but I mean, a confession doesn't necessarily mean anyone else involved is off the hook, right? Especially with so much conflicting information.
It leaves you with that feeling like something's missing, right? Some piece of the puzzle, something that could explain Nicole's role in all of this. Was she really just, a bystander?
Yeah, and I think it really highlights how complicated it can be to find the truth. Especially in this digital age, we leave these digital trails everywhere.
Footprints.
Yeah, and they can tell you a lot, but they can also be misleading. It's like you're sifting through mountains of data to find those little pieces of truth that matter.
And in a case like this, so emotionally charged, those little pieces can be really hard to find. But let's move on for a second. Let's talk about what happened after Shanann and the girls disappeared. I mean, it was her friend, Nicole Atkinson, who really, really pushed for answers. She dropped Shanann off at home after a work trip that morning. And when Shanann went silent, Nicole, she knew something was wrong.
Yeah, and thankfully she didn't let it go. She was really the one who got the police involved. It was her persistence. She noticed all the red flags. Shanann missing her doctor's appointment, the car still in the driveway, no communication at all. She even went to the house, talked to Chris.
And he was acting weird.
Totally.
Yeah.
Evasive. Something was definitely off.
And when you see that police body cam footage, when they first got to the house, Chris, he's not acting right. He's so calm, weirdly detached. And his story kept changing.
Yeah.
First, he said Shanann took the girls to a friend's house, but couldn't give them a name or a number or anything. And then when they started pointing out the holes in his story, he agreed to take a polygraph test.
Even though the investigators advised against it.
Right, and that's when things just, boom, fell apart. His story completely unraveled during the polygraph. And he finally confessed to killing Shanann. But he tried to blame her for the girls' deaths, said she strangled them in a fit of rage after he told her he wanted a separation.
Right, it was like he was trying to make himself the victim.
Yeah.
But the evidence, at the crime scene, his own words, they just didn't add up. It all pointed to something much darker.
Yeah.
And eventually he did tell the truth, the whole horrific story. He led investigators to Shanann, Bella, and Cece. He had dumped their bodies at this remote oil site where he worked. And later, in a prison interview, he gave a full confession. He described how he planned and carried out the murders of his entire family.
It's just bone-chilling.
Yeah.
His confession. He strangled Shanann first, and then he smothered the girls, Bella and Cece. It's just, I can't even imagine that level of cruelty. And to think Bella, she actually asked him.
Whoa, I know.
It's just
heartbreaking. According to Chris, Bella saw him smothering Cece, and she asked him, "Daddy, are you going to do this to me too?" It's just, oh, God, it's unimaginable what those poor girls went through.
And then the drive. He drove 40 miles with their bodies in the truck to this oil site where he worked and dumped them in these separate tanks. And then he just went to work like nothing happened.
It's beyond comprehension. The level of, I don't know, detachment. This wasn't some heat of the moment thing. It was planned, premeditated. It's like he wanted a new life, and his family was just in the way.
It's like he had this switch in his brain, One minute he's a loving father, and the next he's capable of this. It makes you wonder, can anyone really ever know another person completely?
It's a good question. The human mind it's complicated. And, in Chris's case, it seems like his desire for freedom, for this new life with Nicole, it just completely outweighed any love any responsibility he had for his own family.
But there's still so many questions, like where do you get the OxyContin? And his whole thing about Nicole manipulating him, I don't, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, he paints this picture of himself as the victim, of her seduction. He even calls her a Jezebel in these letters from prison. It's like he's trying to shift the blame.
Away from himself.
Exactly. But despite everything, all the suspicious stuff surrounding Nicole, she's never been charged with anything.
It shows you that even when there's a confession, a conviction, sometimes the full truth, it just stays hidden. And I can't even imagine what Shanann's family has gone through, losing their daughter, their granddaughters, and their unborn grandson. It's just
Devastating. And then to have to deal with the media, the constant speculation, it's just unimaginable.
And to make things even worse, Chris's mom, she still defends him. She even blames Shanann for the problems in their marriage. I mean, come on. It just adds another layer of, I don't know, it's just tragic.
It's like some people, even when they're faced with the truth, they choose to believe their own version of reality, no matter how twisted it is.
So I guess, where do we go from here? What can we take away from all of this, the Chris Watts case?
Well, I think it really shows us how important it is to be, I don't know, critical thinkers, especially now with social media and everything. We see these perfect little snapshots of people's lives, and it's easy to forget that there's always more to the story.
Right, right. And, we also see how important it is to have each other's backs. I mean, if Shanann's friends hadn't been so persistent, who knows what would have happened? They really made a difference.
Absolutely. They saw something wasn't right and they spoke up. That's so important.
Yeah, we all need to do that for each other. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I think this case it reminds us that there's darkness out there in the world and in people. We see that even the people we think we know, even the ones we love, they're capable of, well, of anything. It's scary.
It is, but it's also a reminder to appreciate what we have, the people in our lives, and to cherish every moment. And on that note, we hope this deep dive into the Chris Watts case has given you something to think about, maybe some new perspectives. And as always, we encourage you to, keep learning, keep asking questions. If you want to know more, we've got links to articles, documentaries, all sorts of stuff in the show notes. So until next time, keep diving deep.